Everyone, I wanted to go through essentially how you can decide on how to choose a content management system for your new website or for your business. So there's a lot to go through. There are some things you need to consider in terms of whether you want to have a CMS system that's actually hosted by you or one that's actually hosted by another kind of company or potentially even an agency. So we're going to dive through the various different things that you need to consider in terms of basically the goals. We'll look at the technicalities behind it, what you'll need to think about, whether you want to learn to code or whether you actually are more comfortable using a graphical user interface or a drag and drop kind of website builder. We'll dive into some of the features as well that your website may need. So if you're building a website that is essentially an e-commerce store, obviously some content management systems are extensive, which means essentially you can add plugins onto that content management system to essentially make it more extensive and make it more along the lines of what you're looking for. So the first thing that you're going to need to consider when it comes to deciding what website you want to create or what content management system to choose is essentially the purpose and then also the format. So why are you building or why do you need the website in the first place? And is that the right format for the product or service that you are potentially selling to the marketplace? The obviously the main thing is to think about that format. As I say, you've got to look at that in terms of is this a website blog? Is this a online store? Is it a portfolio website? And what is the format that this website is going to be taking? Because ultimately that is going to influence whether we then go down this road of a kind of a standalone website or something a bit more technical in nature. Coming down, then we then think about the custom functionality of your content management system. So how easy is it to customize the actual functionality that makes up your website or content management system? So, can we install things like plugins? Can we create extensions for it? Can we put in bolt-ons? All these different bits and pieces to actually make the content management system do what it is you need the website to do. Some content management systems may even require you to link into what's called APIs or essentially kind of communicating with third-party applications to essentially download material and then install it onto a local database, which is what the content management system is running on. So we need to think about the custom functionality, how extensive is it and how easy is it to build those customizations into the website and into the content management system from the get-go. You also need to think about the team. Is it going to be a website that's going to be essentially controlled by just one person? Is one person have access to this? Or actually, are you allowing a multiple user base access to the website? And then if so, what permissions are you going to allow those users to have? So if you've got a team of, say, 5 people, do all of them need to have access as administrators to the plugins, the settings? Essentially, the more control that you have over terms of the users and what they can do on your website, the better it's going to be in terms of divvying up kind of responsibility for different elements and different parts of the website. So once you kind of know the goals and you kind of know the purpose behind it and you kind of know the format that you want the website to take, we then need to think about essentially the technicalities behind it. So do you want to go down this road of essentially learning to code your own website on WordPress or using something like Ghost or Drupal? One of these sort of content management systems require you to essentially learn to code to build the website from the ground up. It may be that you have a tailored design created, but you now want to convert that tailored design into the fully fledged working website. Obviously, the flip side of that is you then also have things like Wix and Squarespace, Webflow. These content management systems enable you to essentially build a website on the cuff, on the go, without having to know any kind of coding ability, and you can essentially build a website using those tools. However, obviously, each one again comes back down to that original goals and the purpose. And equally, what I would say here is if you are finding that actually Wix will go so far with what you wanted to do, but not all the way, then maybe it's time to think about, well, actually, do we need to go full pelt and just go all in with a code and a kind of a customized website for your business or requirements? Touching briefly on WordPress there, I mentioned that WordPress, is in for coders. That's technically not correct. You can use WordPress to also design and build your website. WordPress comes with a ton of different themes. You can have things such as literally you can start to a WordPress.com website today and have a website literally fully fledged and working today and choosing the themes. And I believe you can sign up for a very small amount if you want to access premium tools and features. But again, it comes down to how much control do you need to have for your website? What kind of stage is your business at? For example, I couldn't imagine a 5 to 10 year business using a WordPress.com website to essentially promote their products or services. I would imagine they'd have more control over their code base, the plugins, and the functionality behind their website. So there are two different versions of WordPress. You've got WordPress, which is a standalone edition, which you have full control over the code base, and are responsible for keeping them ensuring the website's kept updated and so forth. Or you have WordPress.com, which is whereby you can set up a website today, using their tools and equally using things such as their plugins and themes to essentially create a website and you can be online. But again, it comes back down to those goals and your format. Some of the things that you're going to want to think about is also the key features within the website, so or within the CMS. So is the content management system easy to use? So what's going to be easy for you may not be easy to for your staff or employees. So you may need to think about again the simplicity of the content management system. If it's difficult to use, it may not be the right one for your staff. Equally, you need to think about kind of the templates that make up the website. And when I say templates, these are things like that. You know, under WordPress, you can effectively amend and control the how the all looks to display all those bits and pieces. We can actually get real specific in terms of the code base. So with Wix and Squarespace, you can obviously choose customized themes. Again, you can actually choose what you want using their wizard, and that will create a website for you off the cuff. And those are templates that have already been pre-formatted. But again, what kind of control do you have in terms of getting under those pages and seeing the actual code behind it, being able to develop it and furthermore. We then have to think about things like extensions and plugins. So one of the benefits of using things like WordPress, like Drupal, is you can install modules or plugins to essentially convert your basic website from a blog, for instance, which is what WordPress was predominantly designed for, over to a fully fledged e-commerce store using things like WooCommerce and so forth. And these kinds of online stores, then the blog is essentially an online store that you can then start selling your products and offering payment services that way as well. So do think about the extensions, think about those key features. You know, if you're a website that does need an online store, does need a payment gateway, can you install it through a plugin, or does it need customization? In some cases with Wix and Squarespace, yes, they do allow for you to take payment links, but equally it may not go the full hog in terms of controlling the buying process and making it more individual, I suppose. Coming a bit further, we've then got things like the security. So, how often is the code base for the CMS updated? WordPress is updated regularly, as is Drupal, as are these other open source content management systems. Obviously, if you go commercial, go down the route of Wix, Webflow, or Squarespace, those systems are updated internally by their own staff in house. And obviously, there is the dedicated support system there that you can contact if you're having issues with those websites. With WordPress as a standalone, that support isn't there as such. There, however, there is a huge online community. WordPress powering over 30% of the websites online. You can easily get the questions answered by looking essentially online for them. Next thing you think about is that support feature we just touched on there. So do obviously ask questions, get involved in the community of WordPress or whatever content management system you're using, and essentially get to find out how people are doing certain bits and pieces. If you've gone standalone, then again, that support is going to be even further. Whereas if you've gone down the route of commercial and you've got a website design agency doing it, you don't necessarily need to have too much of a hands-on involvement. You can talk to your agency and sort of ask some questions saying, oh, we need to put this on there, we need to add that to there. What kind of support is available from the agency's perspective. And 9 times out of 10, if there's some kind of maintenance agreement in there or support agreement in there, that agreement will stand on happily. They'll happily support you with your requirements. Coming out further, we have the performance. Obviously, if you've got a content management system, the performance is a huge factor. If you fill up a content management system with lots and lots of plugins, it's got to make more requests to essentially pull together all the elements of the website. So do bear that in mind when it comes to your performance and ensure that you've got things like a cache plugin installed, that you're on a fast server, that your website is all been optimized for speed. So essentially you've got the images on the right formats, you've got the text, you've got all these different bits and pieces all sorted, and the website performance is not affected. Often what I find over the years is businesses have had websites built and they're literally listed with between 50 to 100 plugins. And it's in my responsibility to say, well, unfortunately, we don't need some of these plugins. We can remove them, and we can then look at when we create the new website for them, is minimizing how many HTTP requests that website has to make to essentially make it faster and more versatile going further forward. I mentioned briefly also about the topic of user control. So essentially, if you have a user base of between 5 and 6 members of staff, do all of them need access of an admin level to the website? If the answer is no, then I would say limit who has admin access because they can make changes, things like in the settings and to other areas of the website that you may not want them to see. In those cases, look at things like editor roles, shop manager roles, or subscribers. And so within WordPress, you have full like control over those users. And I believe in Drupal, you've got super user and also admin as well. So again, have a look at what user features are within them and what kind of controls you have, and can you extend on them through again the use of a plugin. The next thing you think about is budget. Obviously, everyone's constrained by their budgets depending on what they can afford to do. I've mentioned obviously a few there, Wix, Squarespace, they offer affordable monthly website solutions. WordPress.com, again, another reasonably charged solution. WordPress.org, the standard edition, obviously there you need to look at your website hosting, somewhere to house the website. Obviously, domain name renewals are always going to be there, whether you're on Wix, whether you're on WordPress.com, unless, of course, you just have a subdomain on their package. So do consider, obviously, those costs going further forward and choose a domain that is right for your brand and business. So when it comes to your budget, I would say if you're looking at a standalone WordPress session, do estimate between 1,500 up to £7,000, depending on what you're looking for. But equally, I have seen websites that have gone for far higher. So do estimate quite a lot if you're going to go down the route of standalone editions and recruiting or using a website agency. But then equally, from that agency, you will get a lot of support and they'll be with you throughout the whole kind of process. And you can actually speak to someone who will happily help you with the project going further forward. Next thing is comes testing. So what I would say, if you are thinking in this route of doing it all yourself, do spend some time testing the various content management systems that are out there. Now, what I mean by that is going on to things like Wix, like Squarespace, like WordPress, and downloading a standalone edition of WordPress and literally having a look at it inside. Now, with a standard edition of WordPress, you are going to need to essentially have a virtual server running, but you can find guidance about that online as well in terms of how to install it. So do have a look online in terms of how to set up your standalone WordPress installation to get an idea of how it all looks and before making a decision in terms of what CMS system to use. I would say sign up to 30-day free trials, give them a try, see what you think, see how you find things like Wix, Squarespace, WordPress.com, and so forth, and just see how it all kind of works. And is it going to suit the website and your business going further forward, whether you're just starting up or whether you're actually thinking of a brand new kind of redesign going further forward. I touched very briefly on support. The commercial vendors I've already mentioned, they all have dedicated support teams that you can contact. I think some of them are 24 hours. I'm not 100% sure on that, but most of them you'll be able to contact during the day and find out essentially about various aspects of the website, what kind of problems that you may experience, and how you can and obviously resolve those issues as well. So do look at the support side of things. Obviously, for things like open source, so things like WordPress.org, that standard edition I spoke about, those are somewhat different. With that, you haven't necessarily got a support team you can patch into, but you can contact the growing community of WordPress. It's huge. There's a massive community out there of users that now use WordPress and so forth. So there are communities that you can get involved with. Obviously, if you then have plugins on your website, often we can find that plugins don't always gel with the WordPress or with the content management system that you're using, in which case you would need to contact either the site author or find out essentially, is it the website that's causing the issue or is it the plugin? So there's various things that you do need to think about when it comes to having a content management system. The best advice I think I can give you is to literally go through what I've just said there bit by bit, and literally discover what sort of content management system that you do need. If you are struggling, obviously do reach out. I'm more than happy to sort of help. To give you some ideas in terms of use cases, so to give you an idea here, so if you're looking for a simple blog, then yep, something like WordPress.com will be more than sufficient, unless of course you are thinking about standard. If you are still starting up there, WordPress.com will probably be the best place for a blog. If you're looking for a SME, if you're a small business, then there's things like WordPress. You've also got things like Ghost, Drupal, content management systems. Have a look at all of those and to see which one best suits kind of your requirements and goals going further forward. E-commerce businesses, you obviously have things like Shopify, but you equally have things like WooCommerce, and I believe there's another a cart system out there as well that you can use. You've also got things like OpenCart, Magento for larger, big, globalized companies. So that's an e-commerce solution for you. You've also then got things like for portfolio websites, Wix, Squarespace, Webflow. They'll be kind of really good for those kind of systems. But then equally, WordPress can do exactly the same, if not more, than what Wix and Squarespace can do. Coming further, then you've got things like for enterprise. So enterprise companies, large size corporates, I would say look at things like Drupal, Concrete CMS system, and potentially look at having a customized content management system created using things like Laravel as a framework for that. Last but not least, if you're creating a membership website, you could use WordPress for that because I know WordPress has various different features that can turn their website into a fully fledged membership only website. But again, it all comes back down to that purpose, budget, goals, and your own necessarily technical knowledge of how to put together that kind of website. So I hope that's been beneficial to some of you. Obviously, if you have any questions, do put them in the comments below. I'll be happy to help.